Okay, before we get into more complicated questions about the reliability of the Bible and miracles and all that sort of thing, I wanted to address what I hope is an easy question at the outset, and that is there proof or evidence outside the Bible that the person of Jesus of Nazareth even existed? And so as we get into this, you may wonder, well, is there anybody who really doubts whether Jesus even existed? And in fact, there's a number of people who doubt it. I've actually had people in conversations claim to me that there's no evidence outside the Bible that Jesus even existed. And in fact, even a few famous people, or people a little more famous, have claimed that. Christopher Hitchens, who had been one of the new atheists, he passed away a few years ago. He had a best-selling book called God is Not Great. In that book, he claims, or at least raises doubt as to whether or not the person Jesus of Nazareth even existed. There were also a group of scholars, they were more prevalent in the old Soviet Union, although they still exist in various places in Europe, called the mythicists, who, as the name suggests, they claim that the person of Jesus of Nazareth is just completely mythology. And this is an issue that Barnett addresses very well in your reading in chapter 3. And the way Barnett looks at this is he divides the historical, non-biblical sources into Roman sources and Jewish sources. And so, again, the question we're trying to answer here is, if you've got someone who says, look, I don't believe anything the Bible says, I don't believe anything church history says, and so is there any way to prove any of the things in the Bible if you can't actually use the Bible or anything that Christians have written about the Bible? And in fact, you can. Probably the most important historical source that we have about Jesus and about the early church is the Roman historian Tacitus. He wrote, among other things, the one thing that's come down to us that's of a lot of importance is his Annals of Imperial Rome, which is the basis of a lot of what we think we know about the Roman Empire. And he wrote about how Emperor Nero blamed Christians for the Great Fire in Rome in 64. And if you look on your book on pages 25 and 26, there's an excerpt from his account of Christ and Christianity. And it's pretty remarkable in that Tacitus confirms that Jesus was a public figure and had a career during the time of the Emperor Tiberius, that Pontius Pilate was the Roman governor at this time, that this person was executed as a criminal under Pontius Pilate, that all of this happened in the province of Judea. And interestingly, Tacitus also notes that this movement didn't die with Jesus, but it broke out again, and that it spread from Jerusalem, where it had started, out through the Roman Empire and to Rome itself. And so if you think about it, that's pretty remarkable just within this. Oh, and the other thing to note is that Tacitus was definitely not a Christian, and you can tell just from his writing was not especially sympathetic towards Christianity. Yet he confirms all these facts that really are confirming a lot of the things said in the Gospels and in the book of Acts. You also have Pliny, who was a provincial governor in the Roman Empire. He wrote some letters to the emperor, who at that time was Emperor Trajan, in about 110, talking about this group that was active in his province, which was, he was the governor in a place called Bithynia, which is basically in Northeast, what would today be Northeast Asia. And he says there was this group of Christians, they met once a week on a fixed day of the week, and that they worshiped Christ as God. And then also Pliny, not sympathetic to Christianity at all. And then Suetonius is another one. He relates how in 49 AD, there was a disturbance in Rome, and that Emperor Claudius had not only Christian Jews, but all the Jews expelled from Rome at that time. And that event is also discussed in the book of Acts. So you've got all these sources, none of whom are Christian. In fact, all of them are openly antagonistic towards Christianity, but they establish that Jesus lived, that he had a public ministry, that he was executed by the Roman authorities, and that this movement didn't die with him, but then spread out from Judea. then, as if that weren't enough, you also have Jewish sources. And again, these are Jewish sources that are not Christian and are not even pro-Christian. Probably the most famous or important of these is Josephus, who's a Jewish historian. He wrote a lot, again, about a lot of what we think we know about Palestine and about the Jewish wars with Rome during this time come from Josephus's writings. And in his book Antiquities, he refers to Jesus, and he talks about the martyrdom of Jesus's brother James by the Jewish authorities. So probably Josephus's work on the Jewish side, in terms of Jewish historians, probably the most important. Again, Josephus not a Christian. Then we have a prayer that was written by a Jewish council at a place called Jamnia in pretty early, in about the 80s, that refers to the Nazarenes, which is taken to be a reference to Christians. And again, it's not really positive. Then you've got the Talmud, which is admittedly a later source. It is a series of commentaries on the Jewish law, which mentions Jesus' ministry and execution. And then you also have a revolutionary named Ben Kosiba. His name's sometimes pronounced Bar Kokhba. He led a revolution in Palestine, and he also persecuted Christians, and he refers to them as Galileans, and he refers to his persecution of them. So also a lot of Jewish sources. So one way to answer this question, is there any evidence outside the Bible that Jesus even existed? The answer is yes. He's discussed by the Roman historian Tacitus, the Jewish historian Josephus, and other early non-Christian, you could even say anti-Christian sources. And these sources established that he lived and preached during the time period set out in the Bible, that he was executed by the Roman authorities, and importantly, that a movement that worshipped him as God grew up soon after his death, and that it spread from the province of Judea where it started to Rome and even beyond Rome. So again, this doesn't really touch the issue of miracles or of Jesus' resurrection, but it kind of raises a question that it would have to raise a question in any honest skeptic's mind of if you study the history of this area and this period, you see a lot of different Jewish revolutionaries and Jewish prophets, most of whom are unknown unless you're a historian of this era. Yet this one person, this one teacher, started this movement that turned the world upside down, and it makes you wonder why did that happen with this one revolutionary, this one pastor, this one teacher, and none of the other movements that were around during that time. And so again, it establishes beyond a doubt that this person actually existed, had a ministry, was executed, and then his followers came to believe that he had risen from the dead, and believed it so strongly that they started this new movement that worshipped him as God. So again, that one I hope is an easy question if and when you get it.